Have you ever stopped to really think about how risky your medical device actually is? And, I don't just mean a gut feeling, I mean how it fundamentally interacts with the vulnerability of the human body. Because in the European Union, asking that simple question plunges you straight into the complex and, honestly, sometimes intimidating maze of the medical device regulation classification rules. If you get it wrong, you're looking at delayed launches, compliance nightmares, and potential safety risks. But if you hit the nail on the head and get it right, you've got a clear, solid path to market. Welcome to this explainer. Today, our main objective is to take a pretty dense 59-page guidance document from the Medical Device Coordination Group, specifically MDCG 2021-24 Revision 1, and translate it into a crystal clear, actionable roadmap for your own classification strategy. Here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with the purpose of classification, then look at intended purpose and variables. After that, we'll tackle applying multiple rules, walk through a real-world wound drainage example, highlight some special rules to remember, and wrap it all up with handling classification disputes. Let's get into it.
All right, Section 1, the purpose of classification.
Okay, let's dive right in by anchoring on our North Star here. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, let it be this. Classification is entirely dictated by the manufacturer's intended, specific medical purpose. That's it. It's not based on accidental use, and it is definitely not based on off-label use by a doctor. For example, the guidance points out that a suture organizer meant to be kept outside the patient during open-heart surgery is not an invasive device, even if a surgeon accidentally drops it in. The classification is driven strictly by what you, the manufacturer, explicitly specify in the indents of Article 2. Moving right along to Section 2, intended purpose and variables. So time is a massive multiplier for risk here. The MDR basically breaks the duration of use down into three main steps. Step 1 is transient, which means continuous use for less than 60 minutes. Think of a scalpel. Even if an operation takes hours, the actual uninterrupted cutting action only lasts seconds at a time. Step 2 is short-term, so anywhere between 60 minutes and 30 days. And Step 3 is long-term, which is anything over 30 days. But hey, watch out for this massive trap. Continuous use literally ignores temporary removal. If you take out a contact lens overnight just to clean it, the clock doesn't reset. The specified time period of uninterrupted wear continues. This is exactly why short-term transient devices have vastly different regulatory burdens compared to long-term implantable medical devices. Next up, we've got invasiveness. Now, the rules make a clear distinction between standard invasiveness, like a device entering through a natural body orifice or a permanent artificial opening, like a stoma, and surgically invasive devices. Surgically invasive means penetrating the body through an artificially created opening. And get this, that doesn't just mean a massive surgical incision. Even a tiny little pinprick from a needle makes a syringe surgically invasive. The level of invasiveness directly correlates to the risk class, basically pulling your device higher and higher up that regulatory ladder. Now, take a look at this incredibly complex decision tree used for active devices. These are devices that depend on an energy source, like electricity, gas, or even software to operate. The pathway actually diverges based on whether the device is therapeutic, meaning it administers or exchanges energy, or if it's just for diagnosis and monitoring. If an active device administers energy in a potentially hazardous way, like a surgical laser or lung ventilator, boom, it shoots straight to Class 2B. But if it simply illuminates a patient's body in the visible spectrum, like a standard examination lamp, it stays comfortably down in Class 1. So the nature, density, and site of the energy application literally change everything. That brings us to Section 3, applying multiple rules. So here's the absolute golden rule of the MDR classification system. When you've got multiple rules, or even subrules within the same rule, applying to the same device based on its intended purpose, the strictest rule, resulting in the highest classification, always wins. You can't simply cherry-pick the lowest class to save on compliance costs. The single characteristic that falls into the highest risk class determines the class for the whole shebang. Let's see how this actually works in Section 4, the wound drainage example. This brilliantly illustrates how a single system can have components with totally different classifications. Imagine a simple wound drainage system used for short-term duration. You've basically got three parts. First, the cannula. It's a surgically invasive device meant to reach a wound site to drain a cavity. According to Rule 7, that's Class 2A. Then you have the tubing, which just channels liquids. Under Rule 1, it's non-invasive Class 1. Finally, there's the collector unit to catch the liquids. That's also Rule 1, Class 1. So, as a manufacturer, what's your next move? Well, you have a strategic choice to make.
You can either classify the entire combined system under the strictest rule, making the whole box a Class 2A device, or you can unbundle them. You can conduct separate conformity assessment procedures for the cannula on one hand and the tubing and collector on the other. This just goes to show how classification directly influences your core business and regulatory strategy.
Moving into Section 5, Special Rules to Remember.
Rules 18 and 19 are absolute heavy hitters. Rule 18 states that if your device utilizes non-viable animal or human tissues, cells, or their derivatives, think porcine heart valves or collagen dermal fillers, it almost always shoots straight into the highest risk category, Class 3. The only exception is if it literally only touches perfectly intact skin. Then we have Rule 19 regarding nanomaterials. The classification here hinges entirely on the potential for internal exposure. If a device incorporating nanomaterials has a high or even medium potential for internal exposure, like a degradable bone filler, it's Class 3. If the exposure is negligible, it might be Class 2A. The science of the material dictates the rule. Because of these high classifications, the specific documentation requirements to prove the safety of these biological or nano-based materials are absolutely among the most rigorous in the entire MDR. Finally, Section 6, Handling Classification Disputes. First things first, you can't just guess your class and hope for the best. Your technical documentation acts as your ultimate checklist. You must, 1, explicitly state your chosen risk class, 2, detail the specific rules applied, and 3, rigorously justify the clinical data. If you claim your software only monitors non-vital processes to gain Class 2A, your files absolutely must definitively prove that variations won't cause immediate danger to the patient.
And remember, your classification literally dictates your device's life after it hits the market. Contrast Class 1 with the higher classes. For low-risk Class 1 devices, manufacturers simply prepare and maintain a post-market surveillance report, making it available if requested. But for Class 2B and Class 3 devices, the burden is so much higher. You must mandate strictly updated periodic safety update reports, updating them at least annually. Plus, health institutions and hospitals are specifically obliged to keep strict records of the unique device identifiers, or UDIs, for Class 3 implantable devices they supply, ensuring absolute traceability for patient safety.
But, hey, what happens if you and your notified body fundamentally disagree on how a rule applies? Well, the guidance maps out a formal escalation path. Step 1, the dispute arises. Step 2, the matter is referred for a decision to the competent authority of the member state where the manufacturer has its registered place of business. Step 3, the competent authority must adopt its decision, often consulting other authorities if the notified body is in a different country, and then notify the Medical Device Coordination Group. It's a highly structured, impartial process designed to handle interpretational disagreements without taking sides.
As we start to wrap things up, I really want to read this foundational quote directly from the source document. Classification of medical devices is a risk-based system, taking into account the vulnerability of the human body and the potential risks associated with the devices. It is so easy to get lost in the subclauses and the flowcharts, right? But this reminds us of the ultimate goal. At the end of all this paperwork, the real purpose is protecting human vulnerability.
Which leaves us with one final pretty critical question to ponder. Take a hard look at your current portfolio. Is your technical documentation truly ready to justify its classification to a notified body today? Because if there's any gap between your intended purpose and the strictest applicable rule, now is absolutely the time to find it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.